Good morning, good Erev Shabbos, the last Shabbos of the year, Parshat B'Tzavim, and we are here to learn Perek Dalid of Maseches Demai. Very exciting stuff. Let's get into it. Today's share is sponsored by Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sarah bar Shmuel Leib, Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef, Moshe Yitzchak ben Reb Shraga Feivel. May the Shabbos have an aliyah and before Shlema Ad Sarah Bas Leah B'Soch Shar Chali Yisrael. Amen. Okay, so Maseches Demai is set up because we do not generally trust the Am Aratzim um, regarding Tumas Maasers or many other things as well. So now we have a situation. We have an exception to that rule. In these following cases in Mishnah Aleph, the Chachamim allowed us to rely on the testimony of an Am Aratzim. So here we go. Mishnah Aleph. Halokeach peros b'mi she'eno neman al ma'aser. Someone buys produce from someone who is generally not trusted regarding Maaser. From Am Aratzim, v'shachach la'aser. But he forgot to separate Maaser before Shabbos, and now it's Shabbos. When it's forbidden to separate Maaser, you cannot separate Maaser on Shabbos, even for Demai. You can do it ben hashmashos, ben hashmashos, ben hashmashos. Did I say that right? I don't know. You can do it ben hashmashos, but you cannot do it on Shabbos itself. The shalom the Shabbos. What does it do? He can ask the seller on Shabbos whether he took Maaser from it or not. Yachal apif. If the seller says that the produce was Maaser, then he could he could eat the produce based on the seller's word. Well, what if you don't? So they said this because the seller is going to have more respect for the producer Shabbos and not lie on Shabbos, but you can't trust him the rest of the week. Chashka Moshe Shabbos. However, once Moshe Shabbos comes and it becomes dark, lo yachal ad shias, that he may not eat the rest of the produce until he takes Maaser from it. So now, what if you can't contact the seller on Shabbos? You're not using your phones. You don't live nearby the seller. You bought it in some other part of town, and it's too far to go on Shabbos. So if you didn't find the seller on Shabbos, you couldn't ask him whether the produce was Maaser or not. Amalo achesh enonaman ala Maaser. But someone else who was also not trusted regarding Maaser said to him on Shabbos, being another Am Aretz said about the first Am Aretz, Musarin, I know that this produce is already Maaser. So he may then eat the produce based on his word, based on the second Am Aretz's word, just as he can rely on the seller's testimony that had he found them, that he can eat that produce. Because again, you're not going to. The second Am Aretz is also not going to lie on Shabbos. That's the benefit of the debt that you're giving them, that they're not going to lie on Shabbos, whereas they may lie during the rest of the week. So Chashka Moshe Shabbos. So when it comes to when Shabbos ends, so the rest of the produce, as we said before, must be Maaser before he finishes to eat it. If you finished everything before Moshe Shabbos, okay, fine. So you had to get through Shabbos with the leniency, and then after Shabbos, you need to take the Maaser. I'm assuming that he's taking the Maaser on with whatever is left, and not on the whole thing. I'm not sure. I think so. Now we're going to talk about the case of a meduma. What's a meduma? A meduma is a mixture of trumas Maaser, and chulin. So again, truma is what the Yisrael gives to the Kohen. Trumas Maaser is what the Levi gives to the Kohen. the Levi received Maaser, and then from that Maaser he has to give to the Kohen Truma. It's called Trumas Maaser. And then Chulin is just regular stuff. It's not Truma, it's not Trumas Maaser. So since the mixture contains Truma, it may not be eaten, it can't be eaten by a non-Kohen, unless the Truma becomes bottle in the mixture. The Truma and Trumas Maaser become bottle in a mixture only if it contains 100 times more cholin. Usually you say it's bit the bashishim, but regarding chumas, when you have basar chalav, it's usually bata bashishim. But truma and chumas meiser, it's bitul meya. Okay, let's see this inside. Chumas meiser shall demai shechal shall demakom. So if the buyer separates chumas meiser, means I guess he's a Levi. Um, so if the buyer separates Chumas Meiser from the produce of the Mai and then returned it to his place. He was very mafresh it, then he put it back into the pile or fell back to the pile. He returned it back to the pile, thereby creating a Madua mixture. You already was mafresh it. So before you mafresh anything, it's all that way. Now you're mafresh the Chuma and the Chumas Meiser. So now you're Chuma, Chumas Meiser, and you have Chulin, and all the stuff that is mafresh falls back into the pile. Now you have a mixture. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer, Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, Ah, b'chol shalo v'achol alpiv. In such a case, you may ask the seller, even during the week, whether the produce was meisered, and if he says that it was, then he may eat based on the seller's word. So, why? Because since it was already meisered, so then it turns out that the Chumas Maaser he separated had no kedusha, and therefore did not answer the mixture. And the Chachamim allowed him to rely on the seller in this case because even the Am Aratzim are machmir when it comes to truma. They're scared to eat truma, so they're not going to lie about that. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Mishnah Beis continues with this theme of how we can rely or when we can rely on Am Aratzim. Mishnah Beis. Hamadir es chavera shiyachlu eslo. If someone invites, okay, so you have a case of a new chassan and kala. It's a chuppah, it's a chasna, it's a shara sherbach. Okay, if someone invites his friend to join him for the chasna suda, for the chasna meal, or for the shara sherbach, and he makes a vow, makes a neder that the person he invited should accept the invitation and eat by him. So meaning that if Reuven invites Shimon, okay, and Reuven really wants Shimon to come, and Reuven makes a neder that Shimon has to come, and if he doesn't accept the invitation, then Shimon's going to be forbidden to have any benefit from Reuven's possessions. Okay. But Shimon, the person he invited, the guest, does not trust the host, does not trust Reuven regarding Maasers, because he's an Am Aratzim. So what does he do? The Mishnah says, Ochel imo b'shalas rishona. Nevertheless, he can eat at the Shabbos Sherbach. So the first Shabbos after the wedding, even though he does not trust the host regarding Maasers, but he can only do this provided that the host says to him that the food is Maaser. So the reason why this happened is because they were they wanted to avoid any avid. They wanted to avoid any what's the word I'm looking for? Um animosity. Okay, if someone invites you, for the chasna for Shabbos brachas, they really want you to come. It's really important for you to show up, and you don't go because what about Maaser, then they're going. There's going to be like a tension. It's going to be animosity. It's going to be counterproductive, and it's better that you show up for the Shabbos brachas on the fact that he tells you that it's Maaser, and you know, rather than not having any more bad blood in the world.
It wouldn't be a Shabbos Shabbat. A Shabbos you would believe
He's referring specifically here to Shabbos. It's a Shabbos Rishona. The Mishnah says Shabbos Rishona. I mean, I guess if you go, I guess if you're going with that, because in one case you talk about the seller, and now you talk about so it's not a seller. So I mean, I hear you saying that Mishnah Aleph, you said that the seller is believed is not going to lie on Shabbos. Now you're adding on this Mishnah where you're saying Shabbos Rishona is here you place that principle down the first.
you.
I
Right.
hear what
One
you're
is a
saying.
Levi, one is a seller, and one is just a regular guy.
Yeah, it sounds like a
Okay.
regular guy. It sounds like a regular guy is not a seller. It's the Am Aratzim made a chasna for his daughter or whatever. The Mishnah continues with Shabbos Shnia Afa Pish another menu Hanaya a lo yachol ashiyas. But the second Shabbos, the Shabbos after Shabbos Shabbos, even if the host makes a net that the person will not benefit from, like he made the first week, lo yachol ashiyas. Then he may not eat the food until he takes Maaser on it because even though in those times the wedding celebration continued for 30 days, but after the first Shabbos, the guest's presence is not that important, and therefore it's not going to be it's not going to be cause that much animosity if he misses the second Shabbos after the wedding. And I'm just wondering like what happens nowadays regarding people. Okay, we don't deal with Jewish messages now, but you have Am Aratzim. Let's just use the word Am Aratzim that are that their kashrus is not so gishmak. So do we trust them to say that the simcha that the suda is glak kosher? I mean, maybe if there's a way of verifying that, then great. But if it's in someone's home and they're making like a Shabbos suda, can you eat in their house if you don't know um, what their kosher status is? It's an interesting shayla. I don't know how we pass the halach regarding that, but at least according to Mr. Maaser, according to the Mishnah, I don't know if that's halacha actually, um, but it's an interesting conversation to have. Okay, moving on. Again, we don't paskin any halachas from the Mishnayos. That's all for halachas shit. This is just the concepts. Um, now we're talking about how taking Maaser and the Mai differs from Maaser of Tevel. Let's go with that. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Lezer says Mishnah Gimel, Ein Adam Sarich Likro Shem the Maaser Ani Shel Demai. Um, so um, so generally, a person when they designate Truma and Maaser, they have to call it by name. This is Truma. This is Maaser. This is Maaser Ani. This is Maaser Sheni. He has to actually designate it by name. But but according to Lezer, he does not need to designate by name a Maaser Ani of the Mai. Um, But the Chachamim disagrees. The Chachamim say Korei Shem, you must designate the Maaser Ani by Adamai by name. They ain't Sarach Harfish. But he need not separate it physically from the rest of the produce, since he may keep it. Why can he keep it? Because once the Maaser Ani has been separated and the rest of the produce is mutter, and the only issue is whether the Maaser Ani must be given to the poor. Since it's a din in mammonus, and it's up to the poor to prove that it's theirs, which they cannot do in the case of the Mai. So therefore, the owner may therefore keep the Maaser Ani and eat it since it has no kedusha. Very interesting. Mishnah Dalid. Misha Kara Shela Chuas Maaser Shal Demai, or the Maaser Ani Shal Demai, Lo Yitzlim B'Shabbos. So now, can you give this mission? Can you give Maaser? Can you give the Maaser and Shabbos to people who are entitled to that? So you designated the Chumas Maaser of the my by name, or you designated the Maaser Ani of Tevel before Shabbos. You did all the designations before Shabbos. Okay, but you didn't actually physically separate it from the rest of the produce. You had the pile there. You designated something for Chumas Maaser and something for Maaser Ani, but you didn't actually physically move it. You probably pointed to it and designated this section there, but you didn't actually move it. Lo Yitzlim Shabbos. So he may not take them. He may not give them to the Kohen or the poor person on Shabbos. It's very cool that they're learning all the laws about Hilchos Shabbos with the Mai right now on Erev Shabbos. It's a very cool thing that way. Even though it's not Nogea to us, but it's still like it's learning about Hilchos Shabbos over here. So you cannot take them. You cannot give it to them on Shabbos. Had you separated them beforehand, then you probably could have. Im haya Kohen or ani the mood and lechel eslo yavav yochlu the bavad shiodiyah. But also, Chazal prohibited inviting a Kohen or a poor person to come to his house, the person's house, to eat the Maaser on Shabbos, because everyone's going to assume that they were invited to eat the Maaser that was just separated. But since you can't separate on Shabbos, so people are going to assume that that's mutter to eat Maaser on Shabbos, and that's going to be a problem. But now, if the Kohen or the poor man was a regular member of their household and they came constantly, then they can come on Shabbos and eat the Maaser too, since they usually eat meals by this guy's house, by the balabus. Then no one's going to assume that that they're only here to eat Maaser. This is permitted, provided that the owner informs his guests that he is feeding them the Maasers to which they are entitled. If not, they are going to assume that he's giving him from his own food, and they will feel indebted to him for his kindness. But if they're entitled to it because it's Maaser for the Levi, or it's Maaser Ani for the poor, then they don't have to feel indebted to the balabus because that rightfully belongs to the Levi or to the Aniyim. Haomer the Mishnah, hey, Haomer the Mishnah, Elo Neman ala Maaser Kach li mi shehu Neman mi shehu Maaser. Elo Neman. If someone says to the person says to someone who's not, the person talks to an Am Aratzim, who's not trusted regarding Maasers, buy produce from me from someone who's trustworthy. I want you to go. Here's $100. Go get some produce for me, from someone who's trustworthy. It doesn't specify who. And get it from someone who took Maaser. So the agent is not believed because there's no way to verify it. But if he says, "May ish ploni, go buy it from Yankel," I'm giving you specific instructions to go buy it from my friend Yankel or whoever, and and then this guy is believed because it's verifiable. He can go back and he can go ask Yankel, "Oh, did my guy come and buy from you today?" So, how it's just the agent went to go buy the produce from Yankel. Armalo, and then he returned and said to the one who sent them, Loma Sasu, I didn't find them. But the Chakti Lacham and one. So I went and bought the produce from you from someone else who is trustworthy. Ain't on that one. He's not believed. Since he admissed bought the produce from someone else, we cannot accept his word that he bought it from someone who's trustworthy, and therefore he must take Maaser on that produce before he eats it. That is Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vov. Hanichnas the ear of Eno Makir Adam Sham. This is a wonderful Mishnah. Short and sweet. Not so short, but it's easy. Someone enters the city, goes into the city, doesn't know anyone. You walk into a random place. And by the way, the first thing I do when I walk into a random shul, is anyone here I know. Anyway, and usually 9 out of 10 times there's going to be someone in the shul that I'm going to recognize, which is surprising. I don't remember anybody's names or faces, but we'll have like a conversation. I used to play Jewish geography, and you find someone who knows someone, so it's good out. My kids will recognize someone, or someone else will recognize someone. It's very funny. So someone, if you go into a new city and you don't know anyone there, and you know who can be trusted, we got messages. Omer, do you say who? Mika Neman, Mika Maaser. And he says, who here is trustworthy? Who takes Maaser on the produce? Amal Echad. So one guy pops up. I'm trustworthy. I'm a trustworthy guy. No, you don't believe it. That's like saying, like, if you see someone has a business and they have in the business, because the name of the business is honest, reliable, on time, trustworthy, run the other way. They're either the titles that they're very far from any of those things. But Armalo ish putting that one. But if people from the town says, you know what, that guy over there, he's trustworthy. Everyone trusts him in town. Hooray is there now. And that's good. That he can believe that because they're giving a recommendation for someone else's business. But you can't believe the guy himself who says, I'm a trustworthy guy. You might be able to trust him to rip you off, but definitely not trustworthy guys of Jewish messages. So if he went to go to buy produce from that person, the person who was recommended by the tzibur, Amar lo Mika Mocha Yashan. He asked him, who here sells old grain, which grew before the Omer was offered, because you know that the Omer that we bring on the second day of Pesach of Tezai Nisan is what's matir eating from the new crop. Once you bring the Omer, then everything is considered Yashan. Anything that grows after the Omer, which is only brought once a year, it has to wait until the following year on the 16th of Nisan to bring the Omer again. Amar lo mi shalcha etzli. And then the person says to you, the person who sent you to me self-opening. Even though they appear to be returning favors to each other, because I'm going to recommend you, you're going to recommend me, and they're both benefiting. They're both believed. Why? Because most Am Aratzim, they are Maaser from the produce and are careful to use only Yashan. Imagine this: And Am Aratzim is makbid and yashin and makbid ma'aser. It's very interesting. So the Chachamim were being lenient for the traveler who doesn't know his way around, and allowed him to rely on the testimonies of these people he doesn't even know. And finally, Mishnah Zayin, Achamarim, Shenichnas to the ear, donkey drivers who are transporting grain. They entered the city. Amar Echad, one of them said to the other, Shali Chadash Musachaveriyash. My grain is new, and it's usher, but my friend's is old and it's permitted. Or he says, Shali Enamasuka Musachaveri Masukan. Or he says that mine has not yet been Maaser, but my friend's has been Maaser. They don't have money. They are not believed. They're not believed because they appear to be working together to help each other, and they're in cahoots. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer Naman. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with this, and he says they are believed, even though they seem to be working together. They're concerned that if we don't accept their claim, then they will stop bringing produce to the town, which might disrupt the town's food supply. And therefore, since it's only a Derabanan, they were makil over here and permitted the people to buy from the donkey drivers based on the testimony of their friend. Again, it's the Yemen situation, but it was to preserve the integrity of the food supply in the town. That is the end of chapter 4, Perek Dalet. We will continue on Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem, at 9 o'clock. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Kol Tuv.